Well, hello there and welcome to She Matters. We are so glad that you're with us, whether you're watching on a Tuesday afternoon or a Sunday or a Saturday, whenever. We're just delighted that you're with us and with you and with me and with all of us, as always, are the lovely Edith and Simone. How are you? Sorry, I looked at you.
No, I'm good. I thought you were going to sing, then it was like, bring it on.
Have you heard me sing? I wasn't going to sing.
No,
I'm very well, but we just pray that you viewers are bearing up well under your second lockdown. Is it second or third or lost track?
I think it's
second lockdown.
Second.
We just pray that you're managing to keep busy and keep in the Word and keep listening to Revelation TV, watching Revelation TV.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, as Edith said, and you're so lovely, Edith, you know, the first lockdown, I think, was different for all of us. You know, there was a grace, I suppose, let me use the word grace, in the fact that we were new at it. We didn't know what was going on. The country all came together and, you know, we kind of did our best, but kind of this time around, we kind of know what's coming, don't we? It's a bit like when you have your second baby.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying came to mind as well, is that you're really happy, but you know what's going to take place.
This is the second baby.
Yeah, the second baby. Part of that is good because you're like, oh, I've got experience there, but part of that is like, because you know what's going to happen, it's like, oh gosh, I don't. Yeah. So it's like the two sides of the coin.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody's really happy to be in lockdown. And I know that we do talk about should we or shouldn't we or whatever. But sometimes we just have to do as we're told for the good of everybody. Yeah. And, you know, sorry to say, let's not get into a discussion about, because, you know, if you go on Facebook, you know, master this, master that, master this. I live with my 77, 76, I can't remember, oh my goodness, I'm really not watching, a year-old mum, and she really needs to be protected. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, if you have to wear a mask for a little bit of time, then it's not the end of the world. Put some gel on your hands, have your temperature taken, it's not the end of the world. However, she is, because you're in lockdown there, we believe, as we talk about this, but we're not in lockdown here, and we're not sure whether we are, but my mum's really worried about it, and I don't know how you're feeling. I think there's a lot of people suffering and worried about it.
Yeah, I think there is, and I think sometimes worrying about it makes it even worse.
Yes.
You know, just the thinking about it, and you know, I mean, we talked on last week's programme, I know it's about yoga, but we did mention the word meditation. And so, you know, what we meditate on, what we think about, you know, and the Bible says, as a man thinketh or woman thinketh, so he or she is. And it's so important, you know, what is going on in our minds. And I know that I shared on one of our programs about having some anxiety attacks, and, you know, just realizing, okay, I'm human, I've got the Lord with me, and I can bring that to the Lord. And just to know that, you know, we're going through a trying time, an unprecedented time. It's a time that none of us have lived through. Yes, I believe none of us have, you know, lived through a situation like this. So even though we're all going through our own different things in life in general, this is something that we're all going through that kind of unites us in a way, and whatever we can do to help one another to get through. But just to be encouraged that, which is what I was going to share on my Facebook today, was or earlier, about, you know, not being locked down in your spirit, not being locked down in your mind, because I think that's the most important place. You know, we can be locked down physically, which we don't want to be, but, you know, I think when we're locked on the inside, that's even greater. Yes. And God wants to give us that freedom. And, you know, I just think of Joseph, and just what we see of him, that he didn't seem to be a man that was locked up in his spirit and in his mind. And even Nelson Mandela, I mean, how many years he's locked away, but in his mind, when he came out from physical lockdown, you know, he wasn't locked down in his mind, you know, and the power and testament of that. So,
but we just know it's difficult, and obviously people have suffered from mental health issues before, even before lockdown, but this certainly hasn't helped. And I was thinking about the social side. We are social beings. God made us to be social beings. So I know in the first lockdown I had quite a few friends who really found it difficult to be socially isolated. And we didn't have the bubbles then. I believe that you've got bubbles in the UK, which is good. That's what's needed. But when you are socially isolated, it's so much harder. And as you say, Simone, we've got to depend on, we've just got to, depend on the Lord and trust in the Lord. But also we're grateful these days that we have the technology, to use Zoom and to use Skype, and we can see our loved ones, and we know it's not exactly the same, but at least we can talk to each other. And you were talking about talking and saying how we feel, and I think that is important, whether we're on Zoom, Skype, or with someone. Talk to someone about actually how you're feeling, and probably find they're feeling the same, but it helps us, doesn't it, when we're talking to another person about what's going on in our minds and how anxious we're feeling.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that it is, we wanted to start to talk about mental health today, which is a subject that's really been on my heart for a long time to start to talk about. And I think that this is a perfect time with the new lockdowns. And, during the last lockdown, I actually wasn't locked down at all because we are a necessary because we're news. I was still coming into work. My dad had just died, so I never got the I'm at home and I'm bored thing. And so the grass is always greener. I always think, well, what would it have been like? But to have it the second time round, not that I want to, I'm delighted to be here, but the second time round, I think the first time round everybody was kind of discovering themselves and reading books and doing dances and all the rest of it. And this time around they're like, listen, I found myself. I don't want to go back there again. But I just want to encourage you to I remember you saying that you sort of thought of it as a little bit of a retreat.
I felt like I was kind of shutting with God. Shutting the ark, shut away. And I think a lot of people I spoke to kind of felt like that. And I think a lot of people have found clarity, really kind of, spent time with themselves and God in a way that, and family members that if you're not on your own, in a way that they hadn't before. And so, for me, I was like, okay, that's the way that I kind of looked at it in my own mental health, that, okay, I can... Let me utilise this time, and I really felt like I did. I don't like the thought of going into another lockdown. However, I feel like to prepare myself, I need for my own mental health, I need to say, okay, that this might happen, because saying that I don't think it will because I don't want it to is not helping my mental health. But saying, do you know what, this could happen, and I will be okay, and God, use this time, help me to utilise this time, and for my good, and for God's glory. Let it be a fruitful time. So so when I think like that, I don't feel as upset or anxious, because I'm like, okay, there's things that I wanted to do when we were coming out of lockdown last time. So I think it's focusing our mind. I will miss if that does happen, because I think that having physical touch is so important. And even if someone is not so physically expressive, because we're all different, I think when you can't do something, you realise the importance of it. So being able to hug people, being able to give someone and greet someone with a kiss, and just be in that physical space, I think is really powerful. So I think while we can do that, then we should do that. Because it really does.
It does make a difference. But I do, let's make a plan. This lockdown, we didn't know what we were doing. Let's make a plan this lockdown. Who are we going to call?
That's right.
Who are we going to write to? Do you know somebody that doesn't have the internet? Well, give them a call. Have a today? How are you doing? And one thing that I think that my mum, who is newly widowed, and her and my dad were so close, you know, she doesn't realise that a lot of people are lonely. She thinks she's the only one. I said, listen, you know, so many people. So even if you think somebody doesn't need to, do it anyway. Ask the Lord who is in your neighbourhood, who's your neighbour, to do that. It's like Simone was talking about having a second baby. You know, this time, I don't know whether you had an epidural, but we'll talk about that later.
Oh, didn't I? Actually, never had an epidural, actually.
Well, we were talking about that in the car.
Yeah.
Anyway, mental health.
Yeah.
I don't know whether to ask you if you've ever had mental health issues and how you got through them. I suppose anxiety, you know, is because mental health does go from anxiety all the way to, you know, occasional, you know, to everyday life, and you know, sometimes I see people in their physical bodies, you know, having it. I don't want to. Edith,
no, I'm quite happy. I mean, I feel that I am blessed that I've never had real depression, and we know, you know, so many, sadly, people who have, and we know there should be no stigma to that, because it's no stigma to physical, you know, physical ill health, and there should be no stigma at all to mental ill health. But I think it's because we don't understand it, and obviously the more knowledge we have about it, the better it is. But I am blessed that I've never really had clinical depression or real anxiety. My only experience was when my first husband left me, and yes, I obviously I was depressed, but I was also blessed because I was still working. And for me, to be working and having to think about, and as a teacher, all you teachers out there, you know, once you're in the classroom, there's no way you can be thinking about yourself. So that was good for me. That was a good thing for me. And because I was a bit younger as well, I made sure that I kept active. I'm perhaps too active, but I kept myself active to stop thinking about the situation. But I know that's not always easy for everybody. But I mean, I just thought of a few things that we can do. I mean, it says in the word, focus on the positive, whatever is good, whatever is pure. And even if you can't actually get out very far, I was thinking, you know, just get a breath of fresh air. We are so blessed here. We can walk along by the sea, but the physical can help you, and that can also help you focus on the Lord, because you say, wow, Lord, you've made this and you've made that, and look at the birds and look at the sea, and I think focusing on the positive as much as you can. Every time you've got an anxious thought, just try and think, oh, well, this is beautiful. I mean, I'm just looking at these beautiful flowers we have here, which aren't real, but you know, we see the beauty. Look at the beauty. And I think it's just trying to keep that focus, and, you know, say, Jesus, help me to focus on the positive. Help me to keep my thoughts on whatever is good and truth. And how many times does Jesus say, do not be anxious? We know that those are the hardest words in Scripture. But he doesn't want us to be anxious. That is the thing. He doesn't want us to be anxious. And he wants us to give our anxious thoughts to him.
Yeah, no, just what you just said there is just, you know, it's so key. I was just even thinking that, you know, obviously, that, you know, the Lord made us, and he knows that we are spirit, soul and body. And then what's being discovered now, with what happens when we have anxious thoughts, you know, that releases you know, negative chemicals in our body, makes our cortisol levels rise, which then impacts us negatively. So you know, I believe that God thinks about the whole person, that he's a holistic God. You know, he's not just one area, he thinks about everything. And when he says something, we might receive it just in one area of our life, but actually it's power packed and loaded with loads of other dimensions. And I think, with the discoveries that man is now catching up with God, that yes, when we're anxious, it's not good for our mind, but also it is impacting on our emotions and our physical health. And so he knows that, and is concerned about about our whole life, and then that lowers our immune system when we're anxious, and all these things. So, and that leads to being to sickness. So, what is disease? It's dis-ease within us, isn't it? And so it's amazing how just through that one thing, how something else can be revealed. And it's like, okay, Lord, and I feel like just getting that deeper understanding, it makes me not want to be anxious more. I'm like, oh yeah, well, I don't want it to impact these other areas of my life, and I don't want it to this. So it makes me focus even more to say, all right, Lord, no, I just want to, look to you, and I just realised that for me personally this year, even before the lockdown and before COVID, the word that Lord personally gave to me this year was focus, and intentional focus. And oh my gosh, I mean, that word has never been more appropriate and alive. Like, oh my gosh, just such a distracting year for all of us. And it's just like, that's literally, so oh my gosh, just got to be, and I just think of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, and just his whole life, but him just being purposed, just being driven, being driven. And in that place when he's wrestling with, can we just let this go, Lord? But no, I'm continuing on through all the crazy stuff around him. Is that focus, and it's like, oh Lord, please help me to just remain focused on you and what you've put in my heart to do, and the same for each of us, And
I know that about you. We know that because we've talked about it before, and I was reading Proverbs 31, the Proverbs 31 woman, and it reminds me of you because it says she considers, she does this, she does that, and they're all positive actions. And but having suffered from mental health issues, as wonderful as those things are, if you are depressed, thinking about things that are good is the last thing that you feel able to do.
That's right.
And I think that is, that's why I think it's something that we really do. And I think that both the things you've said are so valid because we do need to be intentional. And I think the one thing we do as a church body is what we say is, oh, let's not talk about it. Oh, I don't know. Just pray harder. Just think about the good things. Don't be anxious. And you're like, listen, you've got no idea what I'm going through. This black cloud that is following me around all day long. But I have to tell you that there is a way through, and I just don't want to diminish what you've just said, because I think it is so important that as a Christian, God is not saying, well, you're not supposed to be having depression, I've saved you from all your sins. He loves you, he knows you. Sometimes it is genetic. Sometimes it is, clinical. Everybody has their own opinion, but I am not against taking antidepressants because sometimes it's chemical and sometimes it's just a balance. But that's just personally me. Exercise makes a big difference because it changes your serotonin levels. And so I think what everybody said is such a positive thing. And if I haven't said it before, please let us know if you do suffer. Help us to help each other. We might have somebody in our world that is suffering. Do you think the church really talks about it enough?
I think they are starting to talk about it. I know, I know people that have, I've gone through a bout of depression, and obviously everybody's journey is different. So some people are in a very, very dark place, and there can be sort of levels. It's not just you're there or you're there. And I think that's the thing. There's not a one size fits all. And I think when we hear things spoken about, and you think, well, I don't fit into that category, so you're not going to talk about it. Then you're just going to hide it away. And then I think that word should. It's a very powerful word. And when we put shoulds on people, that can be quite limiting. And yes, there's where we want to get to, but if I'm here, you telling me I should be there, that's not helping me. No. I need someone to come alongside, and that's why, I was saying before about as well letting people know. I did put that post up on my Facebook page, you know, that if you are struggling, and we are body, soul and spirit, but if you are struggling, to know that you're not the only one struggling, that you can reach out, that there are people that are interested. There are people that are not interested, but there are people that are interested to hear what you've got to say.
I love that. There are people that are not in, but there are.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
and
people that don't understand.
Yes.
I think that is probably the biggest thing.
Yeah.
You don't understand. I mean, if you haven't been there, it's so much harder. You know, as in all situations, it's hard to understand, isn't it? Yeah. And that's what we need: more understanding, more knowledge,
more compassion as well.
More compassion. Definitely more compassion.
Because I think sometimes you want people to understand, but just knowing that someone's with you, you know.
Yes, and I think that makes such difference. Even if they don't understand, they want to be there. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
But I think that, you know, that just emphasises what we're saying, is that just even someone being willing to listen. It's like, because people are so busy, and it's like, you know, we'll say things like, oh, people are just too busy, they're busy with their own lives. And they are, but there are people that are willing to say, you know what, I'm going to step into this space with you, and I'm going to be with you, and I might not have the answers, but I'm willing to walk with you to let's get the answers together. And just knowing that there's someone that is with you, that is not going to judge you, that's not going to be there to try to give you 5 steps out of this, and that's not bad, like what you said, but you just want to know that I think a lot of times that we're just heard, that we're just listened to, because we don't listen to one another as we should. We often listen. But we don't hear. Exactly. And I think that is a different thing, is that, okay, I'll just be quiet until it's my moment to say something, instead of really engaging and saying, okay, what are you saying? And you just want someone to feel like, okay, you've just listened to me. And that is so powerful. That is like a gift.
And I can remember when I was going through a stage where I just felt really lonely, and I just thought, I don't feel like there's an absence of people. I just feel like there's an absence of people who understand or who can empathise, who care. So that's just such a good word. And, you know, it makes such a difference, doesn't it, to feel like somebody's listening
and interested
and,
and concerned, as you say. It's compassion, isn't it? Jesus was full of compassion, and he wants us to be full of compassion for each other in any situation. But especially these difficult situations.
Absolutely. This is I want to introduce you to Tiffany Dawn. She is a lady who suffered with depression for a lot of her years. And I think she has some really valid things that we can share with her. So here she is.
So I've been seeing some videos lately from people who've struggled with mental health issues like maybe anxiety, depression, and felt like God just miraculously healed them overnight. And that's amazing. We need to tell those stories because God can do that, and God does do that. However, the problem is when those are the only stories we're hearing. And I feel like there's not enough stories about people who have struggled through mental health issues and have seen God working in the midst of it. And so today I want to share a different kind of story. I want to share my own story, my own struggle through anxiety and depression, and how God did not just miraculously set me free, and yet I've learned so much and seen him at work so much through the slow process of working through those things. So today I want to share my own story of journeying through anxiety and depression. But the big thing I want you to take away is that God was at work in the slow process. Because sometimes we get this idea that if we're a really good Christian, that God will set us free instantly from our struggles. And that's just not true. God does what he wants to do in each person's life that's different for everyone. And a lot of times he lets us wrestle through things over time. And that is valid, and it does not mean that you are not trusting God. In fact, sometimes you have to trust him a whole lot more when the process takes a while than when there's a quick end to it. And around the same time, my counselor said, I think you're struggling with depression. And I was kind of like, no, but I'm really not. Like, I have family members who struggled with depression. Like, it doesn't look the same for me. And I just kind of shrugged it off and was like, that's not a thing, until I had my daughter, Natalie. And I really struggled with postpartum suppression. It was overwhelming some days and hard to see outside of it. And that's when I started realizing that I do struggle with some depression, and I have for I think a long time, but I never recognized it because it looked different for me than it did for other people I knew. And so over the past few years, I've been trying to work through and find some healing for these things. I started seeing this counselor, and he just started working with me through like these moments when I'm feeling this anxiety, like what's triggering that, what's causing it, what do I do in those moments, how do I talk myself down. And honestly, seeing him for the past 3 years has changed the way I think. I still struggle with that highlight reel movies in my head. I'm working on that part, but I don't wake up every morning afraid I'm never going to see James again. And it's so freeing. Some days I forget that I even used to think that way. Like, I am so much less anxious than I've ever been in my life. And like, people notice, like my close friends, my family, my husband, like they all notice how much less anxious I am. And through that, God has been teaching me a lot about the slow work of sanctification, that his work and his process in our lives is usually slow. There are times when something happens overnight, but a lot of the time it's slow. That slow work has grown so many fruits of the Spirit in my life. Not to say that fast work can't, but a lot of times it's the slow, hard work that brings the most growth in our lives, that teaches us things like patience and compassion for others, and empathy and vulnerability. These are all things that I've been developing because God did not set me free overnight. He decided to take me on this process. And so I've been learning to celebrate the slow work of God.
I really, really do just have to say her name is Tiffany Dawn. You can find her on the internet, tiffanydawn.net.com, and she's on YouTube, and she shares from her heart so honestly, and I think that is so powerful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. I think the season we're in is that we just need to be authentic and real, and people are just looking for, you know, a realness. They're looking for a real God, and they're looking for a realness from us, you know, in sharing our real lives.
Yeah.
And even what she just said there, you know, she's loving and embracing or whatever the slow healing, that process of God. And I just think, wow, that is so powerful, because that is actually the way that God heals most of the time. Even in our physical body, there's a slow process of healing, isn't it? Exactly. You get a cut, it's not healed instantly, and God does heal instantly and miraculously. Yeah, so we believe in that. But just that process that God, we grow up in process, don't we?
So true.
Ooh. So let's embrace that.
Yeah, that's what I got from that. That, you know, let's not be looking for a quick fix. And we all want a quick fix, don't we?
Yeah.
But I think that is so encouraging that, you know, it's a time, and it's a journey. As with our spiritual journey, it's a journey with the mental health as well. Yeah. And what we learn through it, and how much stronger we are when we get through to the other side.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. And you know, we will continue to talk about this. We'd love to hear from you. We would love to hear from you. Really, please do help us to help each other. And please remember that if you're struggling, somebody else is too. So pick up the phone and talk to somebody, be a listener. Sometimes I think when we take our eyes off ourselves, but I just don't want to diminish, as Simone's we've said, it goes from here to here. So wherever you are, you know, maybe you're here, maybe you're here, but God loves you. He has a plan for you, and he can heal you in a quick way, a slow way, and we'll see you next week. So much more to say. God bless you. See you next week. Bye.